Hi everyone, my name is Lise Uytterhoeven and I'm the Director of Dance Studies at The Place and London Contemporary Dance School. I want to express my thanks to the organisers of the Beijing Dance Forum 2020 for inviting me to give this keynote speech. The title of my speech is Online and Blended Dance Pedagogies, Engaging Students at London Contemporary Dance School through the global Covid-19 pandemic. While The Place and London Contemporary Dance School had to close our building, the school itself was far from closed. The staff and teaching faculty immediately set to work to put in place an emergency online provision from March to July 2020. This paper will outline the lessons learned from this process, focusing mainly on the undergraduate students on the BA Honours Contemporary Dance degree program at London Contemporary Dance School, and how this has shaped the blended provision for the academic year 2021, which we are now about 6 weeks into. The speech will be illustrated with examples and excerpts of the students' works, testimonies and outside perspectives. The key elements on which our online pedagogy was based was to have a mixture of synchronous classes and non-synchronous learning activities which were accessible to all students, an increased emphasis on creativity, independent learning and intrinsic motivation, and an ongoing dialogic process to work with students to enhance the quality of the provision. In this speech, I will share reflections on these pedagogical elements. The higher education programs at London Contemporary Dance School are currently validated by the University of Kent before we make a change in September 21, moving to a new partnership with University of the Arts London, UAL, as our new validating body. The University of Kent has been extremely supportive in the transition to the emergency online provision. The key driver for London Contemporary Dance School was to focus on continuity of the provision, to focus on what was possible in order to support all students towards meeting the learning outcomes and passing the required modules to pass, progress or graduate within the normal time frame. The university, with the support of our external examiner, enabled us to make small amendments to the assessment modes where needed. However, reading the module specifications, it transpired that only very minimal amendments were needed. The learning outcomes were kept the same, and only small tweaks were made to the assessments to allow for online submissions where we would normally assess in the studio.
Well, it's been very interesting because at first I really felt like we were going back to the drawing board, in the sense that we all have, I think, as teachers, habits that we fall into and plans that we use over and over again when we have a class, and then suddenly all of this was gone. And so I had to really rethink about all of those, the basic elements, and what is it that I want to work on, or the students to work on. And so rethinking about this, for example, let's say in my class, I like working on the use of momentum, how to use weight. And so suddenly I was thinking, okay, how do I keep these principles on the spot? It's a lot of thinking and preparing, but it's been mostly fun. And I think all other teachers have been saying the same thing. We've been enjoying the challenge.
The first key element of our online pedagogy was to provide a mixture of synchronous and non-synchronous learning. Synchronous learning consisted of scheduled Zoom, practical dance classes, seminars, and group or individual tutorials. Non-synchronous learning activities consisted of tasks that were set for the students to complete in their own time. For example, reading a text, watching a video, writing reflections, providing a creative response to a task. The outcomes of the tasks were then shared with the teacher and the other students using online platforms such as YouTube, Vimeo or Padlet.
Now we have like 2 to 3 classes a day that are like live classes via Zoom. We will have something like ballet or a contemporary class scheduled for each year group. And then we'll have things like Gaga or body conditioning or Pilates. Then we have like all of our lectures as well, which sometimes will be pre-recorded, sometimes they will be live. And yeah, so like your timetable kind of is very open between the morning classes and the afternoon classes that you have, but then it actually is quite quickly like fills up with other tasks and projects and things that you have to do for school.
Providing equitable access to online learning for all students was a key priority. Therefore, a significant shift happened from what used to be a full and intensive timetable of classes in the building towards increased non-synchronous online learning. Keeping synchronous learning deliberately limited, as it was recognized that there could be access issues for students to tune into those synchronous classes. Because many of our international students had traveled home at the start of the pandemic, students were now based all across the world, from Australia to different countries in Southeast Asia, to a range of different countries in Europe, the east and west coasts of the United States and Mexico. Coordinated from London, where the majority of the teachers were based, the timetable tended to group synchronous classes together in the early morning, so that students in Asia and Australia could access them live, with the same or equivalent sessions repeated in the late afternoon, when we could capture students in America. UK and European students were either given the choice of which session to attend or allocated to a specific group. All synchronous activities were recorded and the recordings uploaded onto our virtual learning environment for students to work with in their own time. At the beginning of lockdown, the academic tutors were in close contact with the students, predominantly to offer pastoral support and signpost students to the different support services, such as counselling. Students with learning differences, such as dyslexia, ADHD or autism, were supported more intensively throughout this online learning period, with more frequent meetings with their academic tutor. The tutors also worked in a targeted way to find out what access students had to digital equipment and broadband, as well as space to dance within their homes. Some students didn't have access to a reliable laptop or tablet through which to access the online learning and were limited to using a smartphone. The school sent laptops from the stock in our audio-visual room to these students' homes. One student lived in a very rural area where there was very limited access to broadband internet. The school provided assistance there to boost the signal. However, the greatest inequities existed within the students' access to a suitable space in which to dance. Some students lived in very large houses where furniture could be shifted to the sides to make additional space in which to dance. Some students had access to gardens and large patios. One student even had access to a dance studio within her home because her mother is a dance teacher. In contrast, some students lived in very small student accommodation with very little free floor space. Some students lived in shared accommodation where it was difficult to find a quiet space in which to concentrate. Some students had no access to outdoor space. Soon, the students began to notice these inequities because they could see the conditions in which other students were dancing through Zoom. They could literally see into each other's houses. This caused some dissatisfaction and complaints, predominantly because students were concerned that this would have an impact on their learning achievements and assessment results. It was impossible for the school to address the inequities that existed within the students' living situations, so we could do nothing more than acknowledge these and be mindful of them within the teaching and try to take the inequities out of the equation when it came to assessment.
Since I live in a small apartment with my family in Hong Kong, sometimes it gets quite frustrating, the fact that I can't do the movements to my full extent and not able to use my body at the full of its potential. So I think it's been a learning curve, just understanding my surroundings and then learning from, if I've ran too far, or like if I've stubbed my toe on one of the furnitures, then next time I'll be like, okay, let's make sure there's nothing around me, then do the exercise.
The second element of our online pedagogy is an increased emphasis on creativity, independent learning and intrinsic motivation. The focus of London Contemporary Dance School is very much to create independent artists who can explore their creativity and later go on to create their own work or to work with choreographers as co-creating artists. Online, subjects such as improvisation, somatic practices, Gaga, composition and creative studies worked well. Predominantly facilitated through non-synchronous learning activities, composition and choreography classes began to explore what our head of choreography, Sue McLennan, said, "From restriction can come the greatest creativity." The students inevitably worked through the screen dance medium so that they could capture their creative work and share it with each other and with their teachers. They worked on an introduction to screen dance with Omari Carter from the Motion Dance Collective, who is a graduate from London Contemporary Dance School's own master's program in screen dance. Where in design classes, students would normally have been introduced to lighting design in the Places Theatre, the Robin Howard Dance Theatre, this time they explored the subject by creating a lighting installation using domestic sources of light. One person even created a lighting installation in a dishwasher. Independent learning was emphasized through the vast offer of online learning activities available, with many different enrichment tasks and resources to explore, too many for any individual student to explore. Therefore, academic tutors encouraged students to follow their individual interests and to make their own decisions about what to invest time and effort into. The school relaxed the attendance requirements, instead safeguarding students' mental health. It's not desirable to be glued to the screen all day long. Students may begin to suffer from Zoom fatigue. Instead, the students were encouraged to take exercise outdoors and pursue their own interests. We continued to monitor students' online participation and offered support where students were struggling to engage in some daily practice. We placed a focus on motivation, tuning the students into how they could keep motivated in this new reality. We led specific sessions on motivation with dance psychology experts. We endeavored to foster intrinsic motivation, where motivation is derived from a joy of doing the activity itself rather than external praise or rewards.
We don't have to force any enjoyment of something that isn't working for your space or your situation. Voice it and tell the other people in your class and your teachers, because they will understand.
Just keep at it, or just staying motivated and on top of your work, because even though we're still at home, we still get tasks for like composition and design, which are so crucial, the creative part of the studies that we can easily replicate at home, and just maintaining the creative side of the brain working can really boost your studies and boost what we're doing right now at home.
The third factor in our online pedagogy is that we entered into an open and ongoing dialogic process to work with the students to enhance the quality of the provision. In the lead up to the building closure, daily student rep meetings were held to help us to gauge what students needed clarity on, what questions they wanted answered, and what was important to them. Then, in addition to the school's formal committees, the Student Voice Committee, the Learning and Teaching Committee, and the Academic Board, all with student representation, which are held once per term, we held additional student reps meetings, year group meetings, and even whole school meetings. For example, a whole school meeting was held to discuss the University of Kent's no detriment, no disadvantage policy, which was put in place to minimize the impact of the pandemic on students' assessment and degree classification, to give students a chance to ask questions about how this new policy would impact on them. We also intensified our use of the student newsletter, which is normally emailed once per week. We increased the frequency when needed, and we also enriched the newsletter content with video and other media. Some students take in information more easily when someone talks them through it compared to simply having to read a long text. So again, our communication strategy aimed to include all students by using a range of different modes of communication. The possibilities of online dissemination of students' work soon became apparent. We were able to showcase a range of different student projects on our social media channels, much more so than when these were shared with their peers within the building, simply because these were now screen downs based. Furthermore, our third-year students presented their independent research and self-driven work, titled Negotiated Project, online via the Place's website, further promoted on our social channels. As our Chief Executive, Claire Connor, commented, the views of their work far surpassed what has ever been achieved through the one-day exhibition. We will never go back now. The graduation works, which were fully created and disseminated online between June and August 2020, demonstrate the possibilities for innovation, from creating an online interactive game to screen dance to an online installation users can engage with in their own time. The approach of the school has been not to mourn the old normality and work from a deficit model, but to fully embrace the situation and explore creatively what can come out of the restrictions, while still acknowledging the strong emotions felt within our learning community. Excerpts and testimonies of the graduation works demonstrate the potential for innovation of online creation and dissemination. I will introduce these graduation works through an extended quote from our Chief Executive, Claire Connor, in her article, Despite It All, for the One Dance UK magazine of autumn 2020. From June to July, the class of 2020 from London Contemporary Dance School worked with commissioned dance artists Jamila Johnson-Small, Leah Marojevich, Fernanda Munoz-Newsome, and Thick and Tight for their respective graduate commissions. Collected together under the title Cyber Rats, Despite It All, each piece in startling different ways reflects the contemporary spirit of the place. The resulting works are love letters to the power of dance. They speak volumes about the ingenuity and courage of the collaborators. None of the pieces mourn the loss of the live stage or indeed a live audience, but instead embark on a fearless adventure into new performance territories with unabashed performances that you would ordinarily expect from seasoned performers. In all four works, there are messages here for us as audience members to let go, to encounter a cinematic experience, to take an audio walk, highly recommended, select dancers in a gaming console-style performance, mind-blowing, or meander through an intimate gallery in your own time and space. After such an intense period of lockdown and restraint, exploring these works was nothing short of exhilarating. A chance to experience dance and creativity born out of a deep collaboration and ultimately a trust built quickly and intensely between the artists and the graduating student artists. The commissioned artists have all spoken about how their expectations of the process were quickly surpassed, as everyone involved responded to difficult situations of isolation and restricted movement by finding new ways to engage, uplift, and take care of each other. The resulting works demonstrate new ways to perform intimacy and connection, affirming the potential sociality of both social distance and social media. That concludes the quote from Claire Connor. Next, I can read a few extracts from a review of one of the graduation works, Going Ghost by Lea Marievich, written by Elizabeth Gregory for the State of the Arts Theatre and Dance online magazine from August 2020. Going Ghost is a website which users can engage with as an online installation. They can navigate different areas of the site and scroll through pieces of text, click on video or listen to sound scores. The answer to the question of how you recreate a performance online is that you don't. It's useless. Nothing is less transporting than a small, brightly lit computer screen, synthetic, digestible, distractible. Instead, a site has the power to invite intimacy. Unlike a show, there is an opportunity to see each dancer up close as an individual, laid bare for your eyes only. Equally, you have no restrictions. You may be in bed or chomping on a banana. You may be on your feet dancing. It's not a cam show, but the site has the ability to be as private and as personal, and for both parties. Going Ghost plays on this idea, inviting you into the rooms of each dancer to witness their darkest secrets as poems, music, photos and videos. Because Going Ghost is unable to be physical, it is obsessed with the non-physical, the transient and the emotional. Underneath the pink and green texts are windows into each dancer's space. The thumbnails too are images of bodies, and the page morphs into a giant collage. Each room has similar components: a video of the dancer's movements, a poem in neon, a personalized 10-minute soundtrack by artist Samir Kennedy, and photos of each dancer's actual room taken on a disposable camera. Photos are taken in bed, asleep. Photos are taken of their tears collected in jars. Photos are of body parts, of the artists dressed as ghosts, hidden by white sheets, of windows, of notebooks, and of gardens. The dancer's personality then adorns the scene. Within the emotional cyclorama of Going Ghost, I find further intimacy in each dancer's video. With digital collaboration from artists Erica Karina, each film flicks to a three-dimensional space where photos become expanding walls of each room, and cutouts of the dancers leap or hang, equal elements in their digital cosmos. Scenes are crude and honest, as you would imagine people's rooms to be, and the images are reflective of the workshops the dancers completed. These exercises included using sleep recording apps, dressing in drag on Zoom, and physical imaginary improvisations, all tasks created to encourage the fantastical, the spiritual, and the intangible. That concludes the quote from Elizabeth Gregory. So finally, to conclude, putting in place the emergency provision last summer term has been very challenging, but at the same time rewarding in that we, together with the students, discovered new ways of working that open up how we think about dance and how we think about learning and teaching. We want to retain the good things that have emerged from this online provision. For 2020-21, the school shifted the undergraduate modules around so that we started with the contextual modules first this autumn, those that lend themselves more easily to online learning. All this curricular learning is fully delivered online while the lockdown restrictions continue to some extent. We are currently offering additional practical classes, both face-to-face in the building and online, but we have built these up slowly and these are not yet assessed. In the dance studios, we work in a way that complies with social distancing, keeping 2 meters apart and wearing a face covering. Approximately 2/3 of students take part in these classes in the building. For the first 5 weeks of this autumn term, students have been working in very small groups of around 5 to 8 students and at low intensities, because during the 6-month lockdown period, their dance fitness had deteriorated and needed to be built back up. Students initially came to take face-to-face classes in the building on 2 consecutive days of the week and participated in online classes on the other days. Also, around 1/3 of the students are not currently based in London and are engaging online only. Over the next 5 to 6 weeks, we will increase both the intensity and frequency of the classes, while continuing to offer online learning. From January, the practical modules will become curricular and assessed again, by which point we will have done that much needed and all-important learning about how we can work in the studio in a COVID-secure way. We are facilitating online pathways through the course for a small group of students for the rest of this academic year, as these students are unable or unlikely to be able to move to London in the next few months. These online pathways are something that we are looking to retain for the future. We are embedding online pathways through our periodic program review with University of the Arts London. Furthermore, with this validation with our new partner, we are strengthening our focus on creativity and independent learning even further, fully focusing on the preparation for a portfolio career as an independent dance artist and making sure the students develop the agility, resilience, enterprising skills, communication and storytelling abilities needed to engage a wide range of people in their art. Many thanks for listening, everybody. I look forward to connecting with you over the next few days and hearing about developments in your organizations. Please feel free to connect with me over email as well. I look forward to hearing from you. Many thanks.